Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Everyone loves riding roller coasters, and today you'll get to test and ride your own coasters while building your very own coaster park and hiring experts that give you special abilities. Today, we're taking a look at Coaster Park by Pandasaurus Games. This is a physics-based game with a dexterity element, and it's for 2 to 4 players and takes 30 to 60 minutes to play. Now I'm going to be doing a rule school where I teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. If you'd like to jump to a specific spot, I've placed timestamps in the description of this video to help you get to where you'd like to go. But without further ado, let's get started. Coaster Park is a physics-based game with a dexterity element. You're going to be building different coasters throughout the game and using a little dexterity to get your marble all the way through. And you'll be getting points for each of the flags that your marble passes on your coasters at the end of the game. You'll also be getting points for secret goals at the end of the game. Throughout the game, you'll be hiring experts that will give you special abilities. And you'll be putting up different hills for auction to see who might want to buy it to add it to their coaster. There's many different hills in the game that you'll be able to choose from as they come up throughout the game. You'll also be managing your money through auctions and hiring those different experts. You'll also be testing your rides throughout the game to see if you need to make any changes before the end game. And there's some special hills that give you different bonus points depending on specific hills that are around them. So go on and build your coaster, test your ride, and let the marble roll. To set up, you're first going to build the general supply of all the hills. Now for each unique hill, there's actually going to be 4 of them, and they're all going to have the same information on them. In this case, it's letter. This is letter J. There's going to be 4 of them because it takes 2 of these to build one section of this in the coaster, and so each of these hills can be built twice over the course of the game. And so you'll find each of the 4 pieces with the same letter there and stack them up just like this. And some of the hills don't have letters, but they have names. This says plateau, so again, there'll be 4 of these. You'll stack them all together and put them in the general supply. Now here's all the hills stacked up as I had showed you individually, but you'd put all these off to the side because that's what creates the general supply. You'll also find 8 pieces of cardboard that have the word loop on them. They're all the identical shape. And you're going to take these and remove them from the game. The loop is included as a way to have fun outside of the normal rules of the game, but it's not intended to be played along with the rules of a standard game. So we're going to remove them from the game because it's outside the scope of this video. You'll also take all of the supports and place them off to the side in the general supply as well. You'll be using those to help construct your coasters later. Next, find the launch deck. There's 12 cards, shuffle them up, place them face down off to the side of the play area. Then find the standard deck. In that standard deck, you're going to find the 2 cards that have the word loop in the bottom right, and you're going to discard them out of the game with the loop part since you won't be playing the game with it. Next, take the 3 top cards from that standard deck and place them face up just to the right of that deck. You're then going to take the 2 top cards from the launch deck and place them at the very right of this so that here you have 5 cards face up. Now for each of the 5 cards that you just placed face up, in the bottom right hand side shows you a hill on that card. So here we have the F, the H, the double dipper. So for each of those 5, you're going to grab 2 pieces of cardboard for each of the hills that's on those cards. So now for each of those, we do have those 2 pieces of cardboard out into the central pool of the table. You're then going to give each player $24, and you do that by giving them 3 5s and 9 1s. The rest of the coins can be placed off to the side as a bank. Give each player 1 marble. Find the global bonus card, there's only 1 of them, and place it just below the card row. This is going to score everybody 1 point for every $3 rounded down at the end of the game. Next, shuffle the 6 bonus cards. You're going to deal 1 of these to each player face down secretly and remove the rest of them from the game without looking at them. However, if you're playing a 2-player game, each player will get 2 of these cards face down. Next, you'll construct and give this first player marker to the one that's most recently ridden a roller coaster. If you have trouble putting it together, the back of the rulebook shows you how to construct it. The object of the game is to build the greatest coasters so that your marble will be able to go over as many hills as possible, scoring you points for each one it does. Coaster poker is played over multiple rounds, and each round, each player is going to be able to choose to either propose a sale of a hill or hire an expert. And when proposing a sale, players are going to be able to auction off certain hills, and the highest bidder is going to get it and construct it, where other players might be able to test their existing coasters. So let's go through what it's like to take a turn. On your turn, you're either going to propose a sale or hire an expert. If you hire an expert, you're simply going to pay the cost, which is always $2, to the bank, and you're going to take that card, place it in front of you, and gain that special ability for the rest of the game. Now we won't go through all these because they're very self-explanatory, but for instance, for the rest of the game you could pay $1 less when buying a hill if you have this contract attorney. Or if you're the corporate spy, you can look at another player's secret bonus card. After a card has been taken from this row, that player will decide which of these two decks they'll use to add one card to this row. And when they do so, they add it all the way to the right, sliding cards down to the left. Now if this would happen to be the 6th card, you would discard the furthest card to the left so that you never have more than 5 cards in this row. And anytime a card is added to this row, immediately this hill, D in this case, 2 of those pieces of cardboard are brought from the general supply into the central pool. And so we've added 2 pieces of cardboard here for D. These are now available for purchase. Now instead of hiring an expert, remember you're only doing one action on your turn, you can decide to propose a sale. To propose a sale, the first thing you'll do is choose any one of the hills that are in the central pool, which essentially are the ones that have been brought out by the cards in the card row. If the player doesn't like the hills that are there to choose from, they can take a card from either of the 2 decks, and they can take the hill of this type and add it from the general supply to the central pool. Then they'll add this card to the right, and again, if there is more than 5 cards, the one furthest to the left gets discarded, and all these cards will slide down, so there's never more than 5 cards in this card row. Regardless of if the hill you chose was already existing in the central pool, or you decided to draw a card to bring a new one out as we just saw, the next step to the turn all work the same. Next, you would name a price. You, the active player, must name a price that you'd be willing to pay if it comes back to you, because it's going to be going around through the other players. Now you can bid 0, but also keep in mind that other players might have abilities that allow them to pay a little bit less. Now remember not to be too aggressive on the auction block, because you may find yourself running out of money if you spent too much too early. Now that the active player has set the price, the player to the left of that active player, just clockwise, will have 2 choices at the beginning of the game since nobody has any hills left. The first choice is they can pass, and then simply it would go to the next player clockwise to see if they would like to purchase it. If, while going clockwise, one of the players decides to purchase it for the price that the active player set, the active player then has 2 options. They can take the money directly from the purchasing player, and that purchasing player takes these coasters and gets ready to construct them, which we'll go over later. Or the active player can allow the purchasing player to pay the bank that amount, and that active player gets to choose any one of these cards and put it in front of themselves. It's essentially just like hiring an expert. And keep in mind, in this case, that active player does not need to pay the cost in order to get one of those experts. Now keep in mind that a player's turn ends when either they hire an expert, or during the propose a sale action, somebody buys the hill. Anytime a hill is bought, the turn ends and the next player clockwise will become the active player. Now if when proposing a sale, nobody going clockwise actually wanted to bid, then the player who put this up for sale, the active player, would buy it for the price that they had stated at the beginning. Whenever you buy a hill, you must either build it immediately or put it in your warehouse, which is just right in front of you. If you happen to already have a hill in your warehouse, you must remove this hill from the game to make room for this warehouse, because you can only store 1 hill in your warehouse by default. Some experts will change those rules for you. Now when building a hill, if it's a launch hill, which are these big long ones that go like this down, then you must use those to start a new coaster. If you have a normal or standard hill, you must use those to add to an already existing coaster. Now you can build as many different coasters as you'd like. So in this case, we bought this, we would start a new hill. When building a hill, remember you get 2 pieces of identical cardboard. You're going to put them together using the supports. Now here's a view looking from the bottom of the actual hill with the supports being placed in it. Now if this is a launch hill and you're new to the game, we recommend taking a support and placing it on the top of the very edge just like this. Here's a view looking just down that launch hill from the beginning of it, looking down it. Now if you're building a standard hill onto the end of your coaster, The best way to do this is first place a support at the end, and then put it in the same support that's already there from what used to be the end of your coaster. And make sure that the new hill that you're adding to the end is on the outside of the piece that used to be the end. Now keep in mind, anytime you're building a new hill, regardless of if it's a brand new coaster with a launch hill or adding to an existing one with a standard hill, if you have a hill, or hills if you have certain experts that allow you to hold more than one in your warehouse, you can immediately and simultaneously build that hill or hills from your warehouse onto an existing coaster, or start a new one if it happens to be a launch hill. So in summary, on a player's turn, you're either hiring an expert or proposing a sale for one of the hills. Now during propose a sale, we've already talked about choosing a hill, naming a price, and then buying it or passing. There's actually one more option. Once a price has been set by the active player, when it comes to the next player clockwise, they can either buy or pass as we showed previous. But once players start constructing coasters, there's actually another option a player can do when it comes to them. They can actually decide to test an existing coaster. To do that, they spend 1 coin to the bank, and they pick any one single coaster, and they can roll the marble down 3 times to test it. Because at the end of the game, you're going to be getting points for each of these flags that your marbles pass on your coasters. Now you'll see why we had you put the support at the top of your launch hill, because it keeps this at an even distance of each of the rails so that the marble will sit there nice. So let's take a look at testing this. Now when placing the marble at the top, you can either just place it at the top and let gravity do the work, or you can push it a little bit. You'll learn as you play the game a little bit more. We're going to show you some advanced tips later in the video. Wow, let's watch that again in slow-mo. So turns move clockwise as mentioned, either hiring an expert or proposing a sale, until any player has actually built 7 different hills in any number of coasters in front of them. Then, each player one at a time will take their marble and they'll get 3 free passes on each of their coasters with everybody watching. Now from the best of those 3 tests, you're going to get points depending on how far it successfully went through. For each of the hills that the marble successfully went through, you'll get points based upon the flag. So if it made it all the way through this, then you would get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are double-sided, do not count the flags on both sides. Now through the 3 tries, after you've seen how far it has gone, this one actually you just saw it fall off to the side here, it didn't make it past this. You will actually remove all of the hills that it did not pass through on your best chance. And if there's 2 or less of the hills there, then that entire coaster is removed from the game and you get no points. But if there are some hills left and you have at least 2 of them, then you'd score the points for the ones that are left after you've taken out the hills that it did not pass. After you've scored the coasters, you can then reveal your secret bonus card that you were given at the beginning of the game, and you'll score points for that. For this case, it says score 1 point for each red steel in your coasters. These are all pretty self-explanatory, so I won't be going over any of these in more detail. You'll also then calculate your global bonus for 1 point for every $3 rounded down. Then players add up all the points from their coasters and their bonus, and whoever has the most is the winner. If there's a tie, people line up their coasters, and whoever has the longest coaster at the end wins. If it's still tied, you go to their next longest coaster, and so on and so forth until there's a clear winner. Now there are some special hills that give you additional points for different things. For example, the Double Dipper will give you an additional point for every previous hill that's smaller to this, and smaller is the actual foot range. This is 200, so anything less than 200 that's previous will give you those points at the end of the game. The Plateau will give you 1 point for each hill after the plateau. The Bump will give you plus 2 points if the marble stops right in this hump there in between the 2 bumps. And the Jump will give you 1 point for each previous hill, and they're all written on here as well that you can see. Now let's take a look at some advanced techniques on your roller coaster. Now we told you as a beginner it's good to place the support here because it makes it a little bit easier to get things going. However, it does limit the ability of you to be able to play with this and change the speed, if you will. So if I just place this marble here and just let it go, it does not clear that hill. However, taking off that support allows me to pinch this closer together, which is going to give this some more speed. So I might be able to just pinch it a little bit, but it does make it more risky because it might fall off the track like that. We don't want that to happen. So maybe we pinch it just a little bit. Oh, and there it goes, just like that. And another technique is maybe not even pinching, but giving it a little flick. There it goes, just like that. Now for some tips and tricks, this is a physics-based game. So using a very large hill going into a very small hill probably is not going to give you the best results. Because if I place the marble on here, it's probably just going to go flying. It doesn't matter how many times I try this, or even if I just try to make it go slow, it's going to just fly right off there because it's just too big to kind of get things past like that. Now there's some specialists like the construction foreman that allows you to insert a hill in between two of your existing hills, and you can remove some from the ends and things like that. And now that you have a bigger hill to go down, this probably is going to work just fine. Now you can score good points with the shorter launch hills. You're not always going to be able to get the big tall ones, but if you do build coasters with the shorter launch hills, you're going to want to keep your coaster shorter and have them closer together like this. And showing you the flick trick that I showed you earlier, boom, you can get it right past, and that's pretty good. I actually would have scored us 6 points if it was the end of the game. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Coaster Park and get to the fun quicker than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. Now I placed a link in the description of this video, and that's the best place to ask these extra questions because I'll get notified, but so will Pandasaurus Games.